This little guy right here is what I consider to be the most dangerous type of avoidant in the world. Now, what makes him so dangerous is that he exists within layers. And these layers serve one singular purpose: to get you close and then destroy your connection from the inside. All right, let's play this out though. Let's say that you meet an avoidant and they present to you as a cute, cuddly little bear. This, of course, is their outer layer, the ideal versions of themselves that they show to the world. In previous videos, you've probably heard me refer to this as the magician's cloak. You meet them and at first you think, wow, this person has potential. I can see myself with them long term. But this isn't who they really are. It's protection. And if you're with them long enough, eventually you meet this guy. This is the fox. Now, usually you only meet the fox when they start to like you. Now, the fox is clever, they're playful, they're charming in small doses, they flirt with vulnerability. They might even say, I've never felt this way before, but everything they do is calculated. This is controlled connection. And eventually, you meet the owl. Now, in Japanese mythology, the kitsune, or fox spirit, were known to shapeshift, often into beautiful women to seduce men and ultimately drain their life force for sanity. Now, while avoidants aren't fox spirits, I kind of think a great way to look at the fox is as a guide whose sole purpose is to charm you so they can lead you to the owl. So while the fox is all about getting you to buy in, the owl is about making you fall head over heels for them. You catch glimpses of their intelligence and depth. They talk about trauma. They seem self-aware. Now, like I said, this is the part that pulls you in. It makes you think, they're healing. If I stay, we can grow together. But this is the honeymoon trap, because soon you're about to meet the beaver. Okay, I hope you're starting to see a theme developing here. The closer we get to the center of these layers, the more the avoidant will change. And with the beaver, the biggest change yet happens. All right, let's do a quick roll call. With the bear, the avoidant is independent, calm, cool, and collected, whatever. With the fox, the avoidant is charming. They draw you in. With the owl, well, the owl is all about making you fall in love with them. They basically give you hope. But the beaver is the first one to sense that you are approaching the center. It's the first time the avoidant tendencies begin to actually crop up. Suddenly they're busy, emotionally unavailable, prioritizing work, routines, needing space. They're trying to build a dam between you and their core. Now, what they're hiding is this: the mouse, the innermost layer. The mouse is small, they're frightened, they're deeply ashamed, they're full of self-loathing. This is the part of them that believes, if you really see me, you'll leave. I'm unlovable. I destroy everything I get close to. Now, this is the danger, because when you get close to the mouse, they panic. A few videos ago, I did this analogy where I likened avoidance to a Jenga tower. Basically, the closer you get to them, the more they self-sabotage and destroy their whole tower to protect themselves. Well, they really just don't want you to see this little guy. Now, so far, this layer analogy has been cute, right? But you probably haven't learned anything you didn't already know, because the layers so far just explain what a typical avoidant does, not what the most dangerous avoidant in the world does. Okay, before you, I have all the layers lined up. This, as I just told you, is the part they never want you to see. But let's say that somehow you do. In that case, they are going to run the layer gauntlet again, but in reverse. They'll panic once again. They throw themselves into work. They'll take space. They'll vanish. But here's the trick. After enough silence, right when you think it's over, that's when they come back. Not necessarily with consistency, with insight. Maybe you'll get a vulnerable text from them, a voice note at 1 a.m. It hits deep because it feels real. Then comes the charm again. They flirt, they reconnect, they make you laugh again. And for a moment, It's kind of like nothing ever broke. You believe they've changed, that the worst is behind you. And then finally, the bear returns. Cute, cuddly, also misaligned. It's as if the collapse never happened, as if none of it ever mattered. But here's the truth. They didn't heal. They just rebuilt the mask, layer by layer, so they could start the cycle again. Now, there is a clinical term for this. They're called disorganized avoidants, or as the internet lovingly refers to them, fearful avoidants. But again, are fearful avoidants truly dangerous? All right, so fearful avoidants basically run you through this gauntlet that you see before you multiple times, and it creates a lot of questions, like this one asked by Rachel. When a fearful avoidant leans dismissive and completely deactivates, I read it can take months and months for them to feel safe again. Now, luckily, in this particular case, one of our amazing moderators, Aaron, came to the rescue with an answer. That's what sets our community apart. Not just the incredible moderators and coaches like Aaron who actually get it, but the fact that you're surrounded by people who speak your emotional language, people who don't minimize your pain or tell you to just move on, people who've lived it and are serious about healing. That's why I created the CER Super Offer. It gives you access to the full community, every program we've built, weekly live streams, and even a battle buddy to walk the healing path with you. And right now, you can get all of it for 50% off, but only through the link in the description of this video. Okay, where were we? Are fearful avoidants truly dangerous? Well, yes, and it's because of this. In 1967, Martin Seligman and Stephen F. Meyer conducted an experiment to study control and what happens when it's taken away. Using dogs as test subjects, they placed them in a box where they could escape mild electric shocks by simply jumping over a low barrier. But in the next phase of the experiment, Seligman restrained some of the dogs, making it impossible for them to escape. The following day, even when the restraints were removed and escape was possible, those dogs didn't even try. They just lay there and endured the pain. They had learned helplessness. And it's because of this learned helplessness that I believe fearful avoidants are among the most dangerous type of avoidant to have in your life. All right, so, first the bear shows up. It's calm and full of potential. Then the fox, they're playful, flirty, just vulnerable enough to give you hope. Then, of course, we have the owl. Trauma, depth, self-awareness. You think you're building something real. But then the beaver shows up. Busy, emotionally unavailable, always needing space. You try to reconnect, you get close again, and then silence. Shut down, collapse. Now, over time, that cycle just repeats so many times that you stop trying to jump the barrier. You stop asking for your needs. You stop expecting consistency. And just like those dogs in that experiment, you learn helplessness. Not because the love wasn't real, but because every time you reached for it, you got shocked. And now you're not in a relationship anymore. You're in a cage. And from your point of view, it's actually normal. Oh, and if you think that's the worst way they break you, I haven't even started yet. Okay, you sit down at a long table. A clipboard is in front of you, a row of strangers beside you. A professor clears his throat and explains the rules. It's just a quick perception test. Match the line on the left with the one that's the same length on the right. Slide 1 appears. Oh, that's obvious. You barely think before circling 2. Everyone else does the same. 2, 2, 2, 2. You nod. Yeah, that's easy. Slide 2 appears. This one's a little bit more ambiguous. You squint, you scan. Okay, it's 3. You're sure of it. But then the first person says 1. Huh. That's kind of weird. The next person also says 1. Then the third. Then the fourth. One by one, every single person at the table chooses an answer that makes no sense. Your palms start to get a little sweaty. You glance back at the lines. It's still 3, right? Right? You feel your confidence bend just slightly because everyone else sees something different. What are the chances that you're the only one who's right? And now it's your turn. The professor looks at you. The room goes still. You hear your own heartbeat. Say the wrong thing and you risk looking arrogant. Say the right thing and you risk looking insane. What do you choose? This wasn't a trick of the mind. It was actually a real experiment run in 1956 by psychologist Solomon Asch. Except here's the part they didn't tell you. There was only one real participant at the table. Everyone else was in on it. Actors planted to give the wrong answer, not to test eyesight, but to test conformity. And the result is most people went along with the group, even when the answer was clearly wrong. Some started doubting themselves, others knew the group was wrong, but they chose to stay quiet, to stay safe. And it turns out, reality is really fragile. If enough people say the sky is green, you might start wondering if they're right. Now, the Asch conformity experiment basically proves group conformity as a concept, but I also kind of view it as a metaphor for how fearful avoidants condition you to self-gaslight. Not because they're evil, but because chaos is their emotional baseline, and they pull you into it. If you are indeed trapped in a fearful avoidance cage, the real question becomes, how do you escape? Well, by understanding the solar system analogy. Now, I've often compared attachment theory to solar systems. At the center of a solar system is what? Well, usually the sun. And what revolves around the sun? Well, usually planets. So there are 4 main attachment styles: secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful avoidant. And each one has a different looking solar system. The secure solar system is without a doubt the healthiest looking one. You have a beautiful sun in the middle, secure friends as a planet, maybe a secure romantic relationship as another planet, family, you get it. The anxious attachment is a little different. At the heart of their solar system is a sun that is collapsing. It flares, collapses, flares again. It craves connection so intensely that it starts pulling all its planets too close, burning them. So in a way, every relationship for an anxious person becomes life or death. Every orbit feels like an abandonment waiting to happen. And then we have the avoidant. At the heart of their solar system is a brown dwarf, a failed star. They look like they have the capacity to love. You see the flicker, you can still feel a little heat, but they can't sustain it. There's no fusion at the core. So the closer you orbit, the colder it feels. And then we have the fearful avoidant. They're different. At the center of their solar system is a black hole. It pulls everything in. You don't fall in all at once. At first there's warmth, a flicker of connection, moments that feel like gravity is working in your favor. But over time, the closer you get, the more distorted everything becomes. Reality bends, boundaries collapse, until finally you lose yourself trying to reach the center. This is why so many people who get close to a fearful avoidant don't just walk away heartbroken. They walk away hollowed out, consumed. So how do you escape? Well, on the outside, the answer seems obvious, right? You just remove them from your life. You just cut ties. You block their number, walk away. But what if the fearful avoidant isn't some stranger you met last month? What if it's your best friend, your partner, your sister, your parent? People love to say, just walk away, but they often don't realize that a lot of times you've already tried over and over, but every time you leave, something pulls you back in. This, of course, is the cage I've been talking about throughout this entire video. A really funny thing begins to happen the longer you stay in this cage. You were once maybe bright, full of life, secure, but the longer you stay trapped, the more your own attachment style shifts until you become someone you don't even recognize. And that's the best way to start. I think the only real way to take your life back from an attachment standpoint is to flood it with secure people. Not perfect people, not therapists in disguise, but people who show up consistently, who don't punish you for having needs, who don't disappear when you get close. Because insecure attachment isn't something you think your way out of. It's not cured by isolation or reading more books. It was formed in relationships, it's maintained in relationships, and it can only be healed through new relationships, ones that show your nervous system a different outcome is possible. So this is what I call the fearful avoidance spiderweb. You're at the center, right next to the fearful avoidant who spun the whole thing. We're going to use a spider to represent them. Anyways, you know the deal. They've wrapped you in closeness, confusion, guilt, and hope. And they're doing this using this beautiful nesting doll analogy that I've been using today. Now, one day, you realize you can't move without touching one of their threads. So surrounding you is the first ring. These are your own people, friends, family. Some of them are trying to help. They're pointing at the web saying, hey, can't you see that you're stuck? But you don't want to believe it, because if you admit you're trapped, you have to admit that the person you love put you there. So instead you turn inward, toward the avoidant, which is exactly how they keep you caught. Then there's, of course, the outer ring. Their people, the avoidant's friends, their family, their coworkers, people who don't have your best interest at heart. People who are saying things like, hey, you're too sensitive, or hey, they're doing their best. Maybe you're just overreacting. They're gaslighting you, tightening the threads, convincing you that the web isn't even real, that you're the one causing the chaos. So how do you get unstuck? Well, remember the key with attachment theory. They are formed in relationships, maintained in relationships, and can only be healed through new relationships. So here's what you need to do. We need to start overloading the web with new, secure relationships. And you need to start listening to your own support systems so long as they themselves are secure. So what does that mean? What does a secure look like? Well, someone who's secure doesn't punish you for having feelings. They don't disappear when you need closeness. They say what they mean and they follow through. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to guess. You don't feel like you're walking on eggshells. A secure person feels calm, grounded, steady. And if that feels unfamiliar, that's exactly why you need it. Because if fearful avoidants trap you with confusion, secure people free you with consistency. And the more you introduce these individuals into the web, pretty soon the web can't support it all and it just breaks, freeing you. And this is actually rooted in real research. There's actually this really funny episode of The Rehearsal, which is Nathan Fielder's HBO show. He basically has this guy walk around with a literal confidence pack, following him everywhere, cheering him on, backing him up, making him feel like kind of an alpha. It's absurd, but it's also psychologically pretty spot on. It's based on James A. Cohen's social baseline theory, which basically suggests that the human brain assumes close, supportive relationships as its default operating condition, its baseline. In other words, we evolved to face life as part of a pack. Your brain doesn't expect you to regulate fear, stress, or emotional pain alone. It's wired to offload that burden to trusted others. But when you're trapped in a fearful avoidance web, you often have no one to offload it to. You're doing the emotional labor of two people while also being blamed for the collapse. That's why surrounding yourself with secure people matters, because they become your own little confidence pack. And slowly, your nervous system recalibrates, your inner world shifts, and for the first time, and maybe forever, you stop confusing anxiety for love. Now, if you're a bit confused on where you can start surrounding yourself with your own secure confidence pack, the community I talked about earlier in the CER Super Offer is probably the ideal place. You get full access to the community, weekly live streams, all of the programs I've ever created, and a battle buddy to help walk through it with you. Now, right now, it's 50% off. All you need to do is just click the link below.